And as I say, just to mention, where are we? So we're 19th today, coming up to the Winter Solstice in the middle of this week on the 21st. And it's, excuse me, as some of you have mentioned, this kind of real, it's a turning point, isn't it? It's a kind of coming to a point where the seasons will shift again, the time sort of shifts, the light will start to shift, and we'll get more lightness will grow as we start to get more of a balance of the lightness and darkness, and ending up towards the summer solstice in the middle of the year when we get more light and less dark. And I suppose it's this the kind of this time of year is looking at the idea that sort of nature is kind of hunkered down. Everything's kind of become not growing so much, if at all. As we know, that the ground has been frozen, albeit we're back to a bit of wind and rain today. Most of the trees are bare, and there can be a real stillness that sort of spreads across the land. And actually I met a friend up at Lancing Ring just last week, just trying to think when that was, prior to being poorly anyway, and it was a bit nerving actually, because the roads were really icy, and I had to sort of just let the car roll back into this spot to park it, because I couldn't go any further. And then I was just really nervous about driving back out again. Luckily it was fine by that time, but actually I thought it's not going to defrost, it's going to stay frozen. But it was fine in the end. But just being up on the downs there, I mean, it was frosty, there'd been snow up there, and the whole sky was this sort of blanket of grey. And as you looked out towards the ocean, there was this beautiful slit of gold between the sea and sky where the sun was. And then otherwise, as you walked along, there was this pure stillness, which was just incredible, and you could, everything sort of had that different sound to it, the way your feet sounded on the ground. And even though there were sort of people around, it still felt this incredible stillness. It was really quite beautiful. So it kind of just speaks to this sense of this time to rest, and as best we can, making the most of this pause. And if we can, finding some peace here in that stillness of nature. Because as we mentioned, just the days will start to get longer quite quickly. So now it's about a time to sort of drop into the darkness of the earth and the wisdom that's held there, and creating space for that kind of inner work to unfold its magic. And I think we even speak to that in acknowledging the power of the pause and the power of the rest. And as some of you spoke to, noticing that difference, noticing that transition, noticing what the benefits of pausing can bring to our state of mind, to our state of body, and how we are. And really, each time we do it, it is that lovely reminder, I must do this again. I must come back to this place again. I must pause again. I must come back to the body, must come back home. Sometimes we refer to it as. So yeah, it's a special time, but it's a challenging time because of this kind of run up to Christmas. And of course, this run up to Christmas is then about, being active, whether it's going to fairs and festivals, whether it's the sort of shopping, last minute bits, the preparing. And so there is a lot of activity. So there's a challenge to finding those moments to pause and to rest. So I suppose it's an invitation to, I don't know, I was going to say seek the pauses, but it's almost, it's just making them happen in a way. And something I've just learnt recently, this takes us to a sort of another topic in a way, but maybe, we can come back to it, but just to touch on it briefly. So I'm doing a lot of reading about living fully in the light of death. And so, how we might prioritize our time. Where do we place our importance? What is it we really want to focus on? And there's a real opportunity here to live fully in each moment. And although sometimes we might struggle to find the time to formally sit, it doesn't actually stop us from practicing right now. So there's a phrase that I've sort of using for myself at the moment as like a little mantra, if you like. And it'll come up from time to time. I might remember it, or it just pops up. But it's just to practice now. So whatever I'm doing, whether I'm sitting watching something on the TV, or if I'm reading, or if I'm in a conversation, or I'm doing an activity or a task, just these two words come in: practice now. And that just kind of puts me in that space there and then. And it might just be that I take a couple of deep breaths and just really notice the breath in my body. Or if whatever I'm doing, I might just put my attention into my feet or into my seat. Or if I'm doing something and there's a difficulty that has arisen, I offer myself compassion. And that's been really super helpful. So even if I'm, struggling with feeling unwell or struggling with some difficult emotions, those two words come in: practice now. And so I do. And I just say, oh, gosh, Leanne, I'm sorry that you're struggling in this moment. And that might be all that it needs. But it's this sense of then bringing our mindfulness into every moment, not just when we, are looking for time to formally sit. So something I can share with you there that might just help over this period, and at any time, and you might find your own words or phrases that support you. Just almost like just to get the brain to switch in. Practice now. Yeah. And it's simply just becoming aware. And I'm there, I'm in it. So I'd just like to sort of perhaps weave that into our practice now. More about, I suppose, this kind of shift from doing to being, which we've, in a way, very naturally explored in our first practice there. So just to work with that a little bit longer in this second practice. So the invitation now is to come into that comfortable seat and just find a comfortable posture for yourself. And this could be seated, it could be standing, it could be lying down. Just taking some moments to settle in. Just to help you here, you might like to close the eyes or hold a soft gaze. You might like to take a few deeper breaths. And then releasing those deeper breaths whenever that feels enough. And just for a moment, the invitation here is just to take some moments to reflect on what you have been doing. So you in doing mode, coming up to the preparations for Christmas, just having a moment to reflect on all the things that you've done for that preparation. What you've needed to prepare for. Some of the activities, some of the busyness. And then just turning to any other activities that still need to be done. So here, unusually, I'm actually going to ask you to think of your to-do list. So just allowing yourself to think of some of those things that still need to be done. Last-minute preparations, visits, activities, conversations. Maybe even imagining yourself doing some of those activities. So as we're reflecting and looking forward on all this doing, you might even notice what's the response in the body. Is the body kind of leaning towards this doing mode? Do the shoulders lift up a little bit? With a little bit more holding, a bit of tightening here and there. Maybe even a sense of worry, anxiety, anticipation. Just noticing what's true for you as you Allow your mind to be in the doing mode. And noticing, how does it feel in the body? So we're going to gradually shift now from this sense of doing and noticing all this mental activity and shift into the being mode, a place where we can rest and pause and just be. So to help us do that, just thinking of this, all the things that you've done. Excuse me. So thinking of all the things that you've done, and mentally, perhaps even imagining them in a bag or a box, and just putting it down. Almost just imagining yourself just putting the weight down on the ground. It's done. You've completed it. It's all okay. So just really feel the sense of yourself putting that down. And then turning to all the stuff that still needs to be done. Maybe some of the traveling, visiting, cooking. And actually in this moment, we don't need to worry about it. It's all in hand. It'll happen as it happens. And so again, whether you put it in a box or a bag, something similar, and then just having the sense of placing it down, putting it down. Letting go. And so here you are, just in this moment. Everything's done, nothing to do in this moment except just to be. So bringing your attention into the body. Noticing your breathing. Bringing a small and gentle smile to the mouth. And with every out-breath, just noticing the body soften just a little bit more each time. And to support your practice, you could experiment with just by saying let go on each out breath, just a few times. Let go. You could also experiment with a couple of other words. Again, on each out breath, just saying to yourself, just be. Just be. And then as best you can, letting go of any words, letting go of any images. And just allowing yourself to be with the sensations of the body. If it's helpful, you might like to focus on your breathing, maybe the sensations in your hands or your feet or your seat or the whole body. And when the mind wanders, just coming back to this place of just being. Nothing to do, nowhere to go, just being here. So wherever your attention is, coming to notice the breath, feeling the natural wave of the breath as you breathe in and as you breathe out. And knowing that this is a place that you can return to time and time again. Place where you can rest, where you can pause. And it helps us to reset, refresh. I'm ready for the next part, ready for the next moment. So let's notice the breath for a breath in and a breath out. And we'll bring this practice to a close. So, gently bringing in some movement to the body, opening the eyes when you feel ready. Okay. Well, thank you for taking this time to practice.